Airline refuses to let dad board plane with baby. Then a stranger steps in. A man had just gone through an extensive custody battle for his daughter and finally booked a flight back home to Ohio from Phoenix. Little did he know that another challenge was on the horizon, a debacle at the airport, and the kindness from a stranger was about to change him and his daughter's life for good. Reuben Swift had gone through a lot witnessing the birth of his first precious daughter, Andrea. However, she was not born into a happy wholesome home as the parents were at odds before she was even born. This eventually led to a bitter custody battle between the parents, and after an ugly series of legal battles and personal drama, Reuben emerged from the case as the sole parent. After the trial, he was set to leave Phoenix for his hometown Ohio. But Reuben was not done fighting yet. This eventually led to a bitter custody battle between the parents, and after an ugly series of legal battles and personal drama, Reuben emerged from the case as the sole parent. After the trial, he was set to leave Phoenix for his hometown Ohio. But Reuben was not done fighting yet. Set to begin their life as father and daughter in Ohio, Swift's baby girl was in the hands of a parent who loved her the most, a parent who simply wanted the best for her and put her in the right environment. Things were finally looking good, but there was one more battle on the horizon on the day when he entered the Phoenix airport. While clearing customs, Reuben was pulled aside by the TSA. Despite thinking he had all the necessary documentation to fly with his daughter, something stopped them, and it stood in the way of their happily ever after. The time between his daughter's birth and the conclusion of a long court case meant that his daughter was not eligible to fly yet, as she wasn't even 7 days old yet. This was another snag in his already long and arduous road. He needed to wait 3 more days for his child to fly, but they had no more money left for accommodation or even food. So, Reuben decided to spend 3 days trying to make things work. However, loitering at the airport wouldn't work as security was tasked to remove him until his flight. He eventually approached the hospital for help that would get him well out of Phoenix. The desperate Reuben had initially decided that he would attempt getting a hold of his child's birth certificate sneakily out of the hospital records. His plan was to edit his daughter's age, allowing him and his child to travel back to Ohio unscathed. For this to work, it required the participation of the hospital staff. All members of the hospital staff couldn't cooperate with this plan as it would jeopardize their ethics, unfortunately. Birth certificates take roughly a week to be cleared, but Reuben, with the walls closing and financially, didn't have the time. Reuben wasn't from Phoenix at all, he resided in Ohio, and he wasn't about to involve his estranged ex in this, as this would have led to more custody complexities. Reuben was aimlessly wandering through the hospital, finally falling to his knees through exhaustion, because there was simply nothing else he could do. It was only a matter of time before things almost looked up for a second. At her birth, Andrea's sheer cuteness and presence grabbed the attention of many people, but one, in particular, was a kindly old woman who was a shred of hope. The kindly woman in question was appropriately known as Joy, a hospital volunteer whom Reuben had met when Rue was born. She showed Reuben a form of kindness that he hadn't seen in quite some time. She gave Reuben her contact details in case he needed any help or support, a gesture that even Reuben found strange. But, when he was entirely exhausted and couldn't get his baby to sleep or eat, Reuben reached out to her for help in hopes that she would make herself available to help him the way he needed. The number rang for a while, unanswered. Joy eventually answered, after what felt like a lifetime. With his baby still whining and distressed, he needed her more than ever. As he was to give up all hope and bear with his tantrum-throwing new infant. Reuben was in desperation. He needed the answer to the call that he was now starting to feel wasn't coming. It took to the very last second for her to finally answer, and Reuben couldn't have been more excited and relieved. To his shock, she remembered him, and she was more than willing to hear out the man who was the father of the daughter she adored. But, what exactly did Reuben himself need from her? Joy expressed how she had an incredibly strong feeling to help Reuben because he was such a kind man. It's very easy to see how these two became incredibly kindred spirits who connected immediately. Joy could only hope this faith was channeled in the right way, to the right person Reuben. Joy didn't place any conditions on what she would do to help, and it was Reuben swallowing his pride and looking out for his daughter's needs that he was able to reach out for help. He asked for asylum in her home for one night. Joy was more than willing to accommodate the two. But he could have never guessed how much more goodwill was about to come his way. Reuben first thought that Joy would help him figure out his airline situation as time and money were not on his side at all. But, Joy was about to step up in a way that he never would have expected, and she suggested doing something far more effective and impactful than that. Reuben ultimately was hoping for a night of rest. But, as we said, Joy was in this for the long haul and was determined to help this man and his daughter beyond the bare minimum. Instead, Joy suggested something that brought the man to complete and utter tears of joy this time. Joy offered to let Reuben and his delightful daughter stay for as long as they needed as opposed to just a night. Joy's warmth and hospitality to a man who was still technically a stranger to her is something that simply could never go unnoticed. It didn't in Joy's case. She offered them a place to sleep and eat until they could fly back home. She treated Ruben like a son and treated Andrea like a granddaughter. Blood couldn't have made them any closer. But her kindness hadn't even reached its greatest potential. A family bond formed between two people who essentially became friends overnight. Joy, who was not using her kindness as a bargaining chip, was one of the kindest and fairest women you would ever meet. And she wasn't even close to the end when it came to helping this family. She then had a request for Ruben, not because she felt he owed her something, but because she knew the kind of person Ruben was, a kind one who would help her when she needed it too. That's why they had a connection like no other. But what favor did she need from him? Joy simply asked Ruben to assist her in finding and sorting her late husband's grave with flowers, as it had not been taken care of for some time. She never truly had anyone to help her with this, but she figured Ruben would be more than willing to help her out too. And Ruben, good-hearted, didn't disappoint as the flowers would later become a symbol for both of them. Ruben, during a short stay, did everything he could to ensure that Joy's visit to her husband's grave would not be a lonesome or unsupported one. Ruben knew then that they were connected for life. And in the blink of an eye it was time to go, but not before one final moment arrived. When they returned to the terminal, birth certificate in hand, Joy herself picked up where Ruben left off. She stormed everyone and demanded the airline refund Ruben for his troubles. Joy was as ruthless as she was kind, and there was just no stopping her from helping him get the money he deserved. The wrath that she came with was met with swift reparation for Ruben, who also got bumped up a class in his flight. The two, Ruben and Andrea, were rightfully redeemed. And through this, Andrea received a wholesome family. Ruben purposely kept the details of his custody battle private to protect his family's privacy in the wake of the custody battle and the subsequent press surrounding the airplane debacle. He was just a happy man, overjoyed to have his daughter in safe hands and back in Ohio, the land he knew best. The precious little Andrea may have lost a mother, but at the same time, a loving grandmother was gained. It was then when Ruben's decision to honor her with one more massive gesture cemented their bond in a story that's quite like nothing else. Within a few weeks, Joy entered her home to discover a stunning floral bouquet, which had a note attached addressed to her. The note expressed gratitude for Joy, having shown kindness in a time when the world truly needed it the most. She was a ray of hope that not many people get to experience these days. Ruben and his daughter, by extension, of course, promised that they would visit Joy often as they are family now. Ruben hoped that one day more people will show such unconditional love for each other, as times like this demanded more than any other. Sometimes, the power of kindness is quite like nothing else in the world. Everyone needs to take a beautiful lesson from Ruben and Joy's story. Have you ever witnessed or experienced this level of unconditional kindness before? And are you willing to show it to someone who might need it the most, whether you know them or not?